Excellent. So listen, thank you for being here. Just a very quick intro for the three of you. Sarah Haynes here at the back is founded of Coach Era Technologies, coaching as a service to democratize access to executive coaching, utilizing a B2B2C model. Then we also have Eva De Mol. She's a founding partner of Capital IT, a venture capital firm focused on edtech, digital health, climate tech, based in Amsterdam. And finally, here on my left, we have Silvia Martinez, founder and CEO of LexCrea, a leading law firm here in Spain, focused on startups and entrepreneurs. You're based in Barcelona, but I guess operating across Spain. So we have a fantastic panel, and we will be dealing with how to create, I would say, unbeatable teams. So let me start just finding out about the founding team. No? Usually, every startup starts with a founding team. I mean, I would like you to tell me a bit about how do you would advise founders. And actually, how many of you here are founders or soon-to-be founders? Anyone? Excellent. So you went through the process of selecting your co-founders. So then, from your standpoint, how would you advise, the people here to actually select some of their co-founders, even some late co-founders, which sometimes they happen? Any tips, anything that you can tell us?
Sure.
Selecting the co-founders.
I can dive in. I was the CEO of Bolt Mobility with Usain Bolt, and we started with a very small, scrappy team in Miami in our accelerator, Edison, and we were able to find some really incredible talent in Miami, and we were also able to bring some incredible people from Silicon Valley as well, where we moved from. And so Miami is now one of the biggest, hottest places for technology. There's some untapped potential, and I think we won the Forbes #1 startup in Miami in the ratings for places to work and company culture. And I think it's really, really important when you onboard people for them to realize that the startup culture is not corporate America. It's not 9 to 5, that people understand what the culture is, but also because I worked in Silicon Valley, there's so much burnout that we want to make sure we do things in a humane, sustainable productivity so that we can have teams stay with us. So it's really about people understanding the culture in which they're coming into early on and being able to really, as a CEO, disseminate the culture that you want to build in your company. So I think it's more about the commitment to the culture and your mission and making sure you can articulate that vision to the team.
Yeah, I think maybe, sorry, to add to that, always look for complementary co-founders. And it sounds so simple, but in the end, to truly evaluate whether someone is complementary to your skills, I think makes the biggest difference. And then at the same time, relating to your point, do you have a shared goal, a shared strategic vision? So to add to my introduction, I did my PhD research on entrepreneurial teams. So I studied entrepreneurial teams over a decade, makes me feel very old. But I think one of the key conclusions is really that complementarity in terms of knowledge and skills and a shared passion is just what truly drives a successful team.
I absolutely agree. I'm going to ask you a question. For example, Uriol, would you marry me?
Well, not now because I already have a wife, but yeah, why not?
I mean, it's the same question or similar question that you need to do to make to the co-founder. No?
Absolutely.
You need to have the same or to share the vision. No?
Yes.
Different skills, no, different and complementary, but with the same vision of the project. So this is a question that you need to make.
That's a hard question. But then just going back to complementary skills, I mean, so some people would say is that if the skills are sort of, for instance, one of the founders is more business, the other one is more tech-oriented, and so forth. In theory, that's great, but in reality, it may create even sort of a bit more of tension
But that's not
amongst them.
necessarily bad. So there's also a lot of research that shows that task-related conflict is actually a good thing, and that teams that have that conflict perform better because they have these difficult conversations, and in the end they get to better decisions. Whereas teams that always agree, tend to be less successful because they don't think about their counter ideas that are being opposed.
So then, how would you think about sort of the process of agreeing to disagree? No, because I guess that if you disagree too much, then probably sort of it's sort of maybe a divorce. If you kind of sort of have you thought about sort of how to structure that? Or have you found yourself in circumstances in which you were disagreeing a lot, but sort of something, maybe it was beneficial?
I can speak to that a little
sure.
bit. I think it's really important to understand the big 5 personality types. When I hire people, I look to make sure there's not groupthink, and using the personality styles is really important to assess and understand, to have diversity in the team in how they're introverted versus extroverted. You don't want everyone on your team to be extroverted, because everyone will speak up and speak over each other. And you also want to have introverts, but give them time and space to be able to think about their thoughts, being able to give back the information. So the big 5, just so everyone knows, I'm a professor also, so it's, the acronym is OCEAN. So openness to new experiences is really important. So when I look at personality styles of who I want to join our team, they have to be open to new experiences. They can't say, I want to do this exactly this way always, right? So when people are very concrete, it makes it very difficult sometimes. The other one, the C, is conscientiousness, which is really important. That's the number one thing. To your point of getting married, this applies to all of your relationship. Your personality is formed when you're 3 years old, okay? And we start to socialize ourselves out of our personalities. But internally, you can't change people's personality fundamentally. So you want to find people who are conscientious, who are team players, who think about others before themselves, that think about how does this benefit the whole, the collective as whole, rather than my own personal interests. The A is agreeableness, which to the conflict point, these are ranges, right? You don't want everyone to be agreeable. You want people to be able to have respectful discord and conversations, and so you don't have groupthink, right? And we have N is neurosis, how people are detail-oriented and focused and are able to put the dot on the I and cross the T's. You need people like that on the team, but you also need bulldozers who just run and get things done. So it's important when you're looking at your team to know who you can go to for different things. I wouldn't send my bulldozer to do something that could cause problems later on, right? They don't look back to see what they broke. But with certain things, if I wanted to go a new mission or somewhere, a new market, I would send certain people there to take charge. So.
Excellent. From experience, something, and I don't know whether you guys have found as well, but I tend to invest quite early, sort of pre-seed and so forth. And I meet a number of teams that they don't even have a shareholders agreement amongst themselves. No, that they have not sort of a framework and a legal framework for themselves. No, I don't know whether you have had that circumstance, but forcing the team to actually agree on a legal framework in case on how they are going to to manage themselves in the future. Sometimes it's one of the best things in which they can see whether actually this is going to be a straight road or a very difficult one. Have you had any circumstances, I guess that from your legal side, that...
Yes, always. It's one of the big mistakes that founders make, no? So it's very important to sign a good, simple but good shareholders agreement with all the function, with all the responsibility separately for all the members of the team, and with the results or with the solutions in order to avoid any problems in the future. No? Okay. People think that you only need to sign this kind of documents when a VC comes to your house, but it's important to do it before, so it's a bit challenge.
Interesting. From your side, when you are investing, do you always have these foundational sort of agreements amongst the founding
we
teams?
do a lot around the team. So during my research, I developed a team assessment tool to assess entrepreneurial teams in a more data-driven way. So that is really part of our due diligence. And there we look at prior experience, passion, self-reflection, flexibility. And it's not a test. There's no right or wrong. I think the added value is actually really in those conversations that you also have around shareholders agreement. Okay, like I see you're less passionate around this activity. How are we gonna complement that role in the future? So I think laying those fundamentals before you really start working together is so important. But maybe to add to your point around legals, I would also like to add that it is just really challenging. I mean, if you're a startup founder, first-time founder, you don't know about all this stuff. So I think it's also really logical that you have to educate yourself and ask for advice. But in any case, indeed, never sign something that you haven't read. But I would say it's. I mean, as investors, you see these agreements all the time. So I think it's very easy for us to say, like, don't do this or that. But I think, as a first-time founder, it's not always so straightforward.
Excellent. From the audience, how many of you founders have had to recruit already non-founding C-level teams? Any one of you have had to actually go through our top management teams? Anyone have had to recruit management teams, not founding teams? Excellent, 2 of them. Perfect. So actually what happens usually is that after you set up the founding team, then you need to go on sort of on recruiting sort of more of the top level management teams and sort of cascading down. No? So the question here would be, I mean, what, in my experience, a number of startups have some issues about sort of recruiting top level people. Okay, particularly if you are sort of, if you have not received 100 million or even 10 million, okay, if you are sort of at the earliest of stages, I mean, obviously it's hard to go out and recruit sort of senior people. What have been some of the, to recruit them, to attract them and so forth? Any strategies that have worked for you, that you have seen that either in your portfolio companies or in your companies have been beneficial at those early stages to actually attract top level people, not being part of the founding team? Any?
I would say that it's really important, going back to my point about your values, that people join teams because of their values and that their missions are aligned. And people will take less salary from a company that's environmentally conscious or have corporate social responsibility. Especially millennials and the next generation, they care about the environment. They care about how you're managing your community and how you're extracting value rather than adding value. And so from a company perspective, it's really, really important to make sure you're clear from your mission and your values early on. And to the point that you were making earlier, I think it's important when you're able to share that vision, then also you can coach people about liability and risk and understanding that attorneys are the first person you should hire on a team, right? So you want to get the best attorney for your money so that you can make sure that you don't have any conflict with regulations and so forth. But secondarily, it's also important to be able to have executive coaches on your team and psychologists on your team, and people don't think about that until there's conflict. And as an investor, the most problems that we've had is between the team conflict. It's not the business ideas or how they execute. It's usually some kind of personality problem within the tech team versus the other teams. And so it's really important to be able to bring that kind of understanding and respect between all the teams and have a multidisciplinary approach so that they can see that they're valued in all the different areas and their voice is heard.
Yeah, I think maybe to add to, I totally echo what you're saying around mission, being very explicit around the goal that you like to achieve. On some points I have a bit of a contrarian view. I think especially when you're really small and you're just raising your pre-seed and seed, if you hire people and you have conflict very early on, it sounds harsh, but just let it go. Because you essentially, I think as a startup, you really don't have time to waste on on conflicts too much. And what I've noticed also within our portfolio company, if you're a really small team and there's one person bringing negative energy, and it just like spreads over the whole team. So I would also say,
Fire fast.
yeah, I think building a venture, being entrepreneurial, it's actually all about making mistakes, being resilient, and overcoming those. So. Yeah, also don't shy away for that. And yeah, to your point, I think we really live in an area where people want to feel good about going to their job. So being really explicit about your mission, at the same time being also transparent what is expected when you work in a startup. That is often a lot of work for very little salary, but hopefully there's this reward in the future. So I would always go for full transparency, and if things don't work out, be just really fast in making a decision.
Another point maybe, no? You need to try to attract people, fall in love with the project, no? With the same vision, no? With the same objects, and it's part of the work of the good leader. Needs to attract this kind of person who follow with the same objectives like you.
Excellent. So then, I guess that to attract these senior people, yeah, the charisma of the founding team is also very, very, very important. Have you seen much internal development or internal promotion within startups to actually sort of, I mean, people that sort of in a couple of years they were sort of developers, and then they became CTOs, or people that were sort of sales reps and then they became sort of CROs. I mean, how is that happening in your experience? Should we have more of that?
Yeah. No, I will be short for this. No, I think so. We've really invested from pre-seed, and now first companies got on to raise 100 million. So you really see this full spectrum. And I think it's very important to realize that at the really start of your venture, you need generalist people. You just need people to do stuff. But later on, if you get bigger as a company, you actually need specialized people. So that also means that there's a turnaround of people, and I think that's really normal. So yeah, I would say you definitely see people that are able to grow on that path and grow more into a specific role, but you also see people that just don't really like that. And then there's also the type of people that actually really miss working closely with the founder. And if you're a 100 million company, you don't get to work so close to the founder anymore. So yeah, I think these are all very normal developments, but something to be aware of.
If I can add also, I think you made an incredible observation. It's when I hire early on, I hire for Swiss Army knives, right? If you waited on tables, whatever you did that's not on your resume, I want to know about that. If you know how to mix drinks, when we have events, you can do things like that, I want to know about it. Because as a scrappy startup, you can't afford to pay all these different things, and people are shy about telling them all the things they've done that are not necessarily in line with their career path. But so early on, you want a Swiss Army knife approach where they can do different things, but later on, you need to start to define lanes and boundaries so that people can be able to really specialize and have the expert knowledge when you can start to afford more expert knowledge as well. The other thing I would say in Coachera, the methodology is a roadmap to be able to have milestones in 1 month, 3 months, 6 month, 9 month, and 12-month goals. We develop these performance KPIs for a year long, and then in December we sit down and go, well, you didn't meet this, you met this, you can exceed here, or you can improve here. It's too late, right? So being able for people to see that the company cares about them enough to have coaching as a service and a benefit to be able to help them realize that there's a career path here for you. Don't go anywhere, because I was in Silicon Valley, and every 2 years, the millennials are switching. Right? And it's expensive. It costs twice as much of their salary to be able to onboard and retrain and interview all of the different people. It's a lot of time and that's saved if you can keep your talent, retain your talent. So Coachera is actually a methodology to retain and engage talent that's distributed also. That's a whole new world that people are having to fight with and understand. How do you engage your team when everybody's working from a Zoom camera all day long and they're burned out from seeing their own faces? So So that's the point, is to make sure that there's a career path internally, and you start to see this hidden value and the hidden skills that you have, and coach them up to the C-suite. And most of my executive coaching clients are people who are already in the C-suite. How do we get women and underrepresented into the C-suite? We have to coach them there. So it's a diversity play. It's a real tangible way to be able to say, we value and we invest in you, and provide coaching for you to be able to stay with our team, to move up into the C-suite and other leadership roles, should they want that.
And actually, I think you made a great point. How do we put more diversity into companies? No, so that people actually sort of can feel more embraced and can feel sort of more at ease within. What have been your experiences? In your own companies, in your investees, about sort of how to do that on a sort of more systematic way, rather than just hiding, okay, this individual is diverse, let's bring it on, but sort of more in a systematic way. How have you approached, or have you seen good approaches about that?
I think that, like Sarah said before, it's all the same. No, it's a matter of culture. You need to improve with this kind of culture of diversity and inclusion, and it's one of the challenges, no, that leader needs to make. I don't have any ideas. I'm a lawyer from the legal point of view, but it's very interesting to see that it's the leader who is focused and who makes this kind of the work. No?
Yeah, no, I think you should be really strategic about it. And so we invested in 20 companies, and over 50% of them has a female founder, over 50% has a non-white founder, and I think we don't set any quota when we started, but we were very strategic about where do we want to put ourselves out there, to what conferences are we going, what networks do we care about, and I do think that's something that you need to be aware of. And also, if you're hiring for specific roles, look for platforms online to post your job ad. For example, I know from experience that if I post something on LinkedIn, I will not get a very diverse sample of candidates. But I know if I go to a Women in Product website and I post something, that I will get a very inclusive list. And yeah, I think nowadays there are more and more tools that people can use to also get to that diverse list of potential candidates, but it is something to be wary of.
But because you said that you were not, let me be controversial here, you said that you were not putting quotas, but you mentioned actually a few numbers, okay, which are actually impressive.
Yeah, that is, you're right. No, but
so then, what's the mindset, or at least should, and apologies for that, just so to be controversial here, should entrepreneurs, founders, maybe not write the quotas, but have them in mind?
I think yes. So maybe it's no. I think setting quota in VC is very controversial. I think. We didn't need to do it because we had such a diverse deal flow, but I definitely think I also tell that to the founders that we invest in. Be very careful about what you aim to achieve in terms of diversity. And you make a good point. Maybe it is important to write a number of people down that you want to include in your organization. At the same time, I think being strategic about where you put yourself out there will also lead to that outcome.
If I can add to that, I think when you say strategic, sometimes people think, oh, you're being very manipulative, and I would change the word a little bit, just being intentional. Being able to have the lens in which you're opening your lens up more, like our photographer, to be able to see the world differently than what you used to. It's normal to want to be around people that look like you and sound like you and has a level of same education and background and culture. It's completely normal. But you have to challenge yourself on that normality, right? And to say, am I comfortable to go and be able to seek out and see excellence? I'm a cross-cultural psychologist. I trained because I wanted to make sure that we represent and we see excellence. in tech, not necessarily just because somebody is a woman or not somebody is a brown or black founder. We want excellence, and if they happen to be brown or black and woman, even better, because then you can showcase that we're not doing a quota, we're not giving you a break because you're underrepresented, but we're bringing in the best of the best, and they happen to be in that group that might be seen as underrepresented. And one day maybe we'll have a different shift, and we can help other people who are become underrepresented. But I think ultimately, I developed Dr. Haynes' Collective, which is powering Coursera, and I have an expert list of women and underrepresented in STEAM. And they keep saying there's not a pipeline of us, and I keep looking around in my circles, and I say, I know this excellent founder, I know this excellent VC, I know this excellent incredible incubator led by women and African-American founders like Angela Benton and so forth. And so I think it's really, really important to just be open. And if that's not your comfort zone, that's not your kind of knowledge base, bring in a consultant, bring in a coach, bring in somebody else that can bring you the lens and question and look at your numbers and how you're recruiting. Where are you going to be able to get your talent? And that's really, really critical to
Yeah, I think maybe the final remark, besides it's important that we include people from all walks of life in the entrepreneurial journey, that we just know that complementary and diverse teams just perform better. So I'd say it's really a no-brainer. If you have a startup, you just need this diversity of perspective to be able to become this unicorn that you desire.
And the research shows that diverse teams actually impact the bottom line better. So you want diverse teams. And sometimes I see the opposite, where I see all women teams or all African American teams and all Latino teams. And I would strongly encourage people to step back in that role as well and think about what diversity means is somewhere that looks like the United Nations, where everybody is represented, not just one type of everything in the same group. So I think it's important to make sure that we're inclusive in all ways, in different ages, education, cultures, race, life experiences, travel. You see the world in a different light.
Just one last question, and we have not only a minute, but no more questions? No more questions? Okay, so just 180 each one of you. How can they retain the people that they have right now in times of uncertainty that we have right now? Just one-liner. How can they retain?
Value their input. Value their input and respect their input. Yeah.
I cannot answer this in
one word.
Sorry. No problem. No problem. Anyone?
Yes, transmit the passion and the enthusiasm of the project to the team.
Excellent. Great.
Thank you.
So thanks a lot. It's been a fantastic panel, and thank you for being here.